Before we begin, a quick warning. Tennessee True Crime contains detailed descriptions and images of real-life violence. Some listeners and viewers may find the material deeply disturbing. This content is intended for mature audiences only. And remember, the goal of sharing these stories is not to sensationalize tragedy, but to honor the victims, remember the truth, and give voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. Listener discretion is advised. This show opening is brought to you by Namaste Wellness and Aesthetics. Visit Namaste for all of your skincare, weight loss, and primary care needs. The awesome ladies at Namaste are located at 159 Omni Drive right here in McMinnville, Tennessee. Now, on to the chaos. Some love stories don't begin with flowers, or first dates, or chance encounters even. Some begin behind bars, with stolen glances through reinforced glass, monitored conversations, and a connection that should have never been allowed to grow. In Tennessee, a young nurse walked into a prison looking for a fresh start. What she found instead was a man who had spent most of his life taking what he wanted. A man who didn't just break the law, he broke people. And somehow he convinced her that he was the one person who could protect her. What followed wasn't just a relationship. It was control, obsession, manipulation. A bond built in secrecy, fueled by isolation, and tightened piece by piece until there was no way out. Because by the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already too late. It's a quiet morning in Kingston, Tennessee. Nothing feels off. No tension in the air, no warning signs. Just another routine prisoner transfer outside the courthouse. Officers moving with practiced ease, conversations low, everything unfolding exactly the way it always does. Predictable. Safe. But there was more brewing than just a prisoner transport. And on that quiet morning, outside the courthouse where nothing unusual was supposed to happen, a woman stepped out of her vehicle, raised a gun, and in a single moment turned routine into bloodshed. This is the case of George and Jennifer Hyatt. They say the South never forgets, and Tennessee, she remembers everything. Welcome to Tennessee True Crime, where the shadows of the volunteer state's past meet the stories that refuse to be forgotten. I'm your host, Tiffany Morgan. Each week, we dig into twisted tales of betrayal, violence, and mystery, the ones where whispers carry truth, and the answers are never as simple as they seem. Let's step into the dark and piece together the clues, because in Tennessee, some secrets still haunt the hills. This is Tennessee True Crime.
Down through the smoky hollers where the cold wind sighs, footsteps fall where the moonlight hides, whispers over rivers, a secret lost in time. Welcome to Tennessee True Crime.
Wayne Cotton Morgan stands near the transport van, focused and steady. He's 56 years old, a corrections officer with the Tennessee Department of Corrections with nearly 30 years of service behind him. But that badge doesn't define him. Cotton is a husband, a father, a man who once stood in the chaos of the Vietnam War and came home wounded but alive, awarded a Purple Heart. At church, he teaches Sunday school. He sings in the choir. He's the kind of man that people trust without thinking twice. And right now, he's just doing his job. A few feet away, Larry Porky Harris helps guide inmates into the van. One of them feels different, George Hyatt. Because even in chains, there's just something about him, something controlled and something calculating. His hands are cuffed, his feet are shackled, but he's not contained, not really. Because, you see, George has done this before. Prison, escape, repeat. Prison, escape, repeat. He's lived the cycle more than once. And today, well, today doesn't feel like the end of anything. What no one can see is that this moment didn't start here. It started months earlier, inside the Northwest Correctional Complex. See, that's where Jennifer Forsyth at the time walked in for the first time. A new nurse, fresh out of school, trying to rebuild her life after leaving behind a broken marriage and a past that she just really didn't want to carry anymore. She wanted something better for herself and for her kids, something stable. But instead, she stepped into a world that felt anything but. She would later say that the inmates were relentless, comments exposing themselves, harassment that didn't stop even when the guards were nearby. She also said that the inmates really ran that prison, not the guards. Except for one inmate who was appointed to help her. His name was George. When he was around, all of this stopped. The noise, the tension, the fear, and he didn't just notice her, he intervened. And in that kind of environment, that felt like safety. It didn't take long. Attention turned into conversation, and conversation turned into a connection, and then a connection into something deeper, something heavier. George would give her money, small amounts at first, and say, go take care of yourself, get your hair done, get your nails done, things that made her feel seen and appreciated and important and protected. But protection can look a lot like control if you're not careful. Jennifer eventually started bringing him things, food, money, even a cell phone, until the day she got caught by a guard bringing George something else. Not for anything scandalous, get your mind out of the gutter, at least not on the surface. Jennifer smuggled in shrimp. But, it wasn't just shrimp, because it cost her everything. Her job, her career, her clean start. That should have been the end of her and George, but it wasn't. George said he loved her. He wanted to be with her. He asked him to marry her. George stayed in her life. He tried to win her family over with gifts, but they noticed something off. There were calls and there were letters and there was a constant presence, even though he was behind bars. Her family would later say, "How does he know everything?" Well, that's because he monitored everything. She couldn't speak freely. She couldn't move freely. And still, she stayed. Now, on May 21st, 2005, just 3 months after meeting each other, they got married inside Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. It was a wedding behind bars. It took about 20 minutes. A marriage without privacy, without normalcy, without ever being alone together, not even once. And somehow, that didn't stop anything. Now, in the weeks that followed the marriage, Jennifer's world began to shrink. She sent her children back home to Utah and took a live-in nursing job caring for a husband of Betty Dye. Now, Betty said that Jennifer was very caring, very attentive to her husband. And Betty didn't think twice about George not being there with Jennifer because, after all, Jennifer had explained that her husband was, overseas, fighting in Iraq, in order to explain away his absence. Now, piece by piece, Jennifer disappeared into a version of life that didn't quite make sense until it became too much. One night in June, as Jennifer sat alone, She decided she could not handle the overwhelming control of George anymore. So you'd think then that she would block his number, change her number. I mean, he's behind bars for quite some time, so it's easy just to disengage, right? But that's not the route that Jennifer decided to take. Instead, she opened a bottle of pills and started taking them by the handful, one after another. Then her phone rang. It was George. She told him what she was doing, what she had already done. And suddenly, he wasn't distant anymore. He was urgent, demanding her, go to the hospital, go to the hospital. She resisted at first, but he did not stop. Jennifer said she got so tired of him yelling at her to go to the hospital that she drove herself, barely conscious. George had hung up from her and called the hospital to let them know that Jennifer was on her way. So they went out to the parking area and found her unresponsive. Jennifer slipped into a coma. Her family was called and told to prepare to come say their goodbyes. But Jennifer lived. And when she woke up, there was a moment where everything could have changed, but it didn't. 2 weeks later, August 9th, 2005, back in Kingston, Tennessee, the transport is underway. George Hyde is being loaded into the van to go answer to more charges that he has elsewhere. His chains were tight, movements controlled. Cotton Morgan stands nearby. Porky Harris is beside him. Routine. Then, a vehicle pulls in behind them. A Ford Explorer. At first, no one reacts. I mean, why would they? A door opens. A woman steps out. It takes a second to recognize her. It's Jennifer. She's holding a gun, a 9mm. Time slows. Everything narrows. Cotton turns. Porky turns. George looks straight at her. And there's a moment, just a flicker, where it feels like anything could happen, where the outcome isn't written yet, where the gun could point anywhere. At George, at Cotton, at Porky, at anyone. And then George's voice cuts through everything. Shoot them. But for a split second, it's unclear. Is she going to do it? Is she going to turn the gun on George? End it right there? After everything, the control, the pressure, the spiral, is this where it breaks? Or is Jennifer already too far gone? The gun lifts, a breath, a heartbeat, and then the shot rings out. Cotton Morgan drops. Chaos explodes instantly. Jennifer fires again, round after round, toward Porky Harris this time. He returns fire. People scatter and dive and scream. Like a scene from a movie, there's a shootout right there at the courthouse. And in the middle of it, George runs, still in shackles, still chained, but running. Jennifer turns, jumps into her SUV, and disappears. Cotton is airlifted, but the damage is too severe. He doesn't survive. A man who lived through war, lost in a courthouse parking lot. The manhunt ignites instantly. Sirens and helicopters and roadblocks and lockdowns and canines, but they're already moving. They're already gone. Jennifer is bleeding, shot during the exchange. Porky Harris had unloaded his weapon into her vehicle. He even tried shooting out her tires, but barely missed. The bullet tore through the vehicle into her body. Now she and George meet up and they're on the move again, this time with George driving. Jennifer is in agony. George doesn't stop, doesn't even slow down. And Jennifer is pleading with him, telling him, I am in pain. I can't take it anymore. I can't go on. but good old George just keeps driving. Now, eventually, they abandon the SUV, switch vehicles. A witness tells police that he remembers a gold Chevy van backing into where the Ford Explorer had been seen left behind the subway. But by the time that police get that tip, they've headed north and they're long gone. And again, Jennifer is begging and pleading for George to stop because the bullet that tore through her is leaving her in excruciating pain. But George has no concern for her. He just keeps going. They almost drive through to Ohio, but eventually stop in Erlanger, Kentucky. They need tools. George is still in shackles, and they can't walk into a store with a man in shackles and a woman bleeding profusely. So they adapt. Curbside pickup before it was ever even a thing. Now, within an hour, they're in a motel room. And inside, there's no relief. Once the shackles come off, George does not help Jennifer. He doesn't treat her wound. Instead, the control shifts again, in a different way. I mean, remember, they're married, and they have never been alone. So George takes this time for his honeymoon. Now, afterward, food is ordered. She fades in and out and eventually passes out. When she wakes up, her hair is gone, cut off. George told her she needs to change how she looks. She needs to dye her hair black. People are going to notice her. The TV is playing in the background. There's news coverage. Their faces are plastered everywhere. Their names. The media is calling them the modern-day Bonnie and Clyde. And then the truth lands. Something that Jennifer did not yet know. Cotton Morgan is dead. The manhunt tightens. Tips flood in. They're everywhere. Police track them to the motel in Erlanger, Kentucky. There's the van. They figure out the room number. They surround the hotel and bust in the door. And inside, they find no one. The hotel room was empty. The pair had already gotten ahead of them again and left, but there was evidence left behind. The hacksaw from Lowe's, some personal items, shackles, and plenty of Jennifer's blood. They scour the area around the hotel, and in the dumpster they find a duffel bag with a 9mm. When they ran the plate on the van, they found it belonged to none other than Betty Dye, the woman whose husband Jennifer had been caring for, the woman whose home Jennifer had been living in. They had unknowingly aided in this scheme of George and Jennifer's. How did she even get the van from Betty? Well, a sob story, of course. George will lose custody of his daughter if I don't go testify for him. I mean, after all, he's in Iraq. So, Betty let Jennifer borrow the van. And then, when they evaded police again, they left that van behind because, they know that this is the vehicle that police are looking everywhere for. It had been smeared all over the news. The police were too little too late in Kentucky, but before long, there was a cab driver in Cincinnati who recognized them, and he led the police to Columbus, Ohio. He said that he had picked the couple up from right there in Erlanger and taken them all the way to Columbus. That's not a short drive. According to what the pair told the cab driver, they were heading to an Amway convention and had gotten into a car wreck, but they were determined to make it to that convention. This time, the net closes. Inside the motel room, Jennifer is absolutely unraveling. She's thinking about consequences and prison and death. George isn't. The phone rings and Jennifer answers, finally, the towels that she has been waiting on from room service are being delivered, right? The person on the other end says, "Jennifer?" She says, "Yes." And just like that, it's over. SWAT moves in. No fight, no final stand. They surrender. 36 hours from routine to ruin. They take Jennifer to get treated for her wound, and at the hospital, Jennifer is only interested in one thing. Is George okay? Absolutely unbelievable. Now, back in Kingston, no one is asking about them, at least not right then. You see, they're mourning Cotton Morgan, a husband, a father, a man who gave his life doing a job that on most days just felt routine. The community lines the streets and floods the service to offer prayers and love and support for his family, the only thing that they can do for them during this tragedy. And back in an Ohio court, the pair appears separately for their extradition. Jennifer's lawyer tells her, refuse extradition, try and delay what we believe is going to be the inevitable, which is the death penalty. And at George's appearance, he tells the judge he wants to sign his extradition. Well, that is, until he found out that Jennifer wasn't going. He says, "I don't want to go anywhere without her." How romantic. They were eventually extradited back to Roane County. And on August 22nd, 2005, that same community would come together yet again when Jennifer and George were brought back to Kingston in unmarked cars to answer what they had done. People lined the streets again, but this time not offering prayers and love and support. This time they were yelling at Jennifer and George. Guards were thick, bound and determined not to let George get away again. They were there to send a message. Charges were filed. No bail was given. They filed notice of intent to seek the death penalty, and they were sent off behind bars. And then the state begins its work. Jennifer stands there blank, seemingly medicated, numb, and then she's sent back to jail. So there she is, back in prison, full circle. She's not on duty this time. She's waiting on her own demise. And this case was rock solid. I mean, tons of evidence, lots of witnesses, everything fell together. And in a case of true Southern justice, the courts decided that the ultimate decision of Jennifer and George's fate would go to the family of Cotton Morgan. Would they decide that they wanted to see them pay with their lives, or would they show death? Would they show mercy? I'm sorry, foreshadowing. The family decided that they wanted to see them dead. Jennifer's defense asked for a plea bargain, but the family of Cotton said absolutely not. They did not want to settle this case at all. So Jennifer's attorney takes a different route. It's time to throw George under the bus. They come out with phone records to show the enormous amount of phone calls. They talk about the abuse and the harassment. They even talk with her children and get recordings of Jennifer's kids saying what the death penalty means to them. And when the Morgans hear Jennifer's young son saying they pray that she doesn't get the death penalty, their hearts soften. In exchange for a life sentence, on September 17th, 2007, over 2 years after Cotton Morgan lost his life, Jennifer pleads guilty to first-degree murder. She says what she did is unforgivable and receives life. As part of that plea, she faces Cotton's widow. She also agrees to testify against her Clyde, her husband, George Hyatt. Now, Jennifer would later say that even from behind bars, she still fears him. In 2009, George pleads guilty. He too avoids the death penalty. and also receives life. And Cotton Morgan is remembered not for how he died, but for how he lived. On that August morning in Kingston, Tennessee, Wayne Cotton Morgan stepped into what should have been just another day. He had already survived war, built a life, raised a family, given nearly 30 years to the TDOC, and in the end, it wasn't a battlefield that took him. It was a woman in a parking lot, a place where nothing extraordinary was supposed to happen. Jennifer Hyatt made a choice that day. Whether it was driven by fear or control or love or something that Jennifer herself couldn't even really fully explain. It doesn't change what followed, though, because one man is gone. A family was shattered, and a community was left trying to understand how something like this could happen at all. And George Hyatt, he got exactly what he had always taken: control. Even from behind bars. Today, both of them sit inside prison walls in Nashville, Tennessee. Their story is frozen in time. No parole, no second chances, no rewriting what was done. But what lingers isn't just the crime, it's the question. At what point does influence become control? And at what point does love become something else entirely? And how far can someone be pushed before they stop choosing for themselves? Because the most unsettling part of this story isn't just that a life was taken. It's that for a brief moment, standing in that courthouse parking lot with a gun in her hand, Jennifer Hyatt still had a choice. And we all know how that ended. And y'all know me well enough to know that if I were Jennifer, it wouldn't have been Cotton Morgan I would have been shooting. Some relationships don't start with fear. They start with attention, with protection, with someone stepping in at just the right moment, making you feel safe and seen and chosen. But control doesn't always look like control in the beginning. It can sound like concern. It can feel like love. It can slowly isolate, manipulate, and reshape reality until the line between choice and coercion becomes almost impossible to see. And by the time the warning signs are clear, you may already be in far too deep. Not every story like this ends in violence, but too many begin the same way. Quietly and subtly, without anyone else noticing. So as the story lingers, maybe the question isn't just what happened, it's how easily it can happen, and how important it is to recognize the difference before control becomes something that you are not able to escape. This episode, Modern Day Bonnie and Clyde, was written and hosted by me, Tiffany Morgan, and produced by Christian Weeder with Main Street Media. Background music and theme song by John T. Productions. Research support from Court Archives and Murderpedia.org. Sound clips from Dateline NBC. This finale was brought to you by the wonderful folks at Jones & Co. Real Estate. If you are buying or selling a home, come visit us at 304 Mulligan Street or give us a call at 931-474-2020. There is a wonderful team of qualified and friendly realtors ready to go to work for you. And if you'd like to sponsor an episode, we would love to partner with you. Our sponsors keep our shows funded and running. To support Tennessee True Crime, follow us on Facebook at Tennessee True Crime and Instagram at TN True Crime. You can find case and evidence photos on those socials. We are also now on Spotify and most other streaming platforms. Give us a follow and please leave a rating. Now, if you have a case that you're interested in me covering, please feel free to email me at tntruecrime@mainstreetmedia.llc. I have started having people reach out to me, whether it's to request case coverage, tell me about cases going on in their area, to give me feedback, or just introduce themselves and tell me that they're a listener. And I absolutely love it. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to talk with each of you. Join me next week as we uncover another Tennessee case that has left a lasting mark. Because here in Tennessee, we never stop telling the stories that matter, and some secrets we refuse to let stay buried. Tune in next time on Tennessee True Crime.
Down through the smoky hollers where the cold wind sighs, footsteps fall where the moonlight hides, whispers over rivers, a secret lost in time. Welcome to Tennessee. True crime. Dark tales in the mountains where the mist won't lie, echoes of the fallen under starless skies. Hear the hush of memory, the voice of the unsaid. This is Tennessee true crime, where the shadows tread.